The excitement, as long as it's there, and it still is with me, and the motivation, and the waking up in the morning today and say, what can I do today? I don't always say, what can I do today to make the world a better place? But, I'm alive and let's make the best of it. So I think that's the excitement of everything.
Welcome to Behind the Screens, conversations with background screening pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Behind the Screens, conversation with background screening pros. And today is a special program, one of my longest and oldest friends in the screening industry who I've been waiting to have on the program for some time, and this is now the time. This is a one-of-a-kind individual, an original, and I use original in the best sense of the word. There was a time, believe it or not, when there was not all these companies that did county searches, and this guest is a gentleman who, as far as I know and concerned, originated the idea of county search networks. There was a time when there was no source of international checks, and this is the gentleman that initiated the process of putting together international resources that we now just take for granted. There was a time when there was no industry publications. We take those for granted today, but that didn't just happen magically, and this is the guest that originated that with something that you might recall the Background Investigator. And there was a time, believe it or not, when the industry never met. They never talked. They never got together. They didn't know each other. And this is the gentleman who put together on his own dime the first industry conferences. We'll talk about that in Long Beach, then in Florida, leading to the formation of NAPBS, now PBSA. And on a personal note, this is a gentleman that really got me started in the background screening industry in terms of a public role, because for whatever reason invited me to be the keynote speaker at a lot of his conferences. And of course, by now you've probably guessed that I'm talking about the one, the only, the living legend, Steve Brownstein. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Les. I'm glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, Steve, let's start off before the first question. You're sitting there wearing this great shirt with the old map in the background. Where in the world is Steve Brownstein today?
On the island of Saipan. I moved here a couple decades ago, and I've been here ever since. It's my home base.
All right. And, this is kind of a teasing question, but how'd you end up in Saipan as your home base?
It's kind of a twofold story. One is I was working in Chicago at nighttime. I was doing the international background checks, and my wife, Rhoda, was working during the day, and I'd work at night, so our paths never crossed. So I thought it'd be a good idea if I could just find a place that we could live, that we both have, I could work and she could work and we'd be together at the same time. So when she retired, we looked around the world for a place to live. And you had spoken about an island called Saipan. I don't know if you remember this, but this is way back when. And you said you lived down here on an island, Saipan. And I had a lot of business in Guam. So I was thinking of moving to Guam for the Air Force Base and Navy Base work. And you said, oh, Saipan, I lived there. You should check it out. So I went to Guam, checking it out, and I took a quick airplane ride that turned out to be like a week and a half on Saipan, a beautiful island, all the South Pacific kind of lifestyle that you expect. And I can understand why you liked it so much. So that's why I sat down here and stayed here for a couple of decades now.
Oh, I was Saipan, and I introduced some friends of mine there, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. I got a little history on you, that's for sure. Yeah.
I got to be careful when I say things to people. Right. Well, that's fantastic.
Good. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. It really is an island paradise. So let's start where we normally start. What are you doing these days? What's your current position? What do you do? What do you find interesting about it?
Well, I'm still, of course, I'm in the background check business. I'm a record research provider, not a CRA. And, I've been like that for my whole career. I'm still operating, I'm running Straight Line International for what it's worth. But my main project right now is I'm trying to put together a map of the world judiciaries and how to access them and what the different the hierarchy of the court systems in the different countries of the world. And it's a nice project. As I'm getting older, there's less and less projects I think I can complete, but this seems to be one of them. So I'm busy on that as a process, and I'll put it out a little bit at a time. I post on the link in a little bit at a time. But I think that's something that every record providers can use, and CRAs, to make their job easier for what they're reporting. So that's exactly.
And Straight Line, of course, it's been in existence since I've been in the industry, right? Yeah, your company.
No, you're a little bit. I started in 2000. Right, I was with Crime Source before. Right. And then I sold to DAC, and then I managed DAC criminal records, and I was a Crime Source division of DAC, and we picked up quite a few, CRAs during that time, and the business grew exponentially around it. That was a breakthrough time in the business when just background checks were kicking off, and everybody was excited, and it was going gung ho.
Well, let's step back. What was your career path in the background screening industry? How did you get started? How did it, transpire?
Back in the mid 80s, 1980s, I'm talking about, not the 1880s. I'm old, but not that old. in the 80s. So I had a friend, his name was Barry Isaacson. He's passed away. He's a great guy. And he had a law clerking business in Cook County, Chicago, Illinois. And what he did was, back then it wasn't electronic, so everything had to be manually at the courthouse. And he would get faxes from his attorneys in the suburbs to go to the courthouse, and I'd help fill in for him in front of judges or things to get continuances. And over that period of time, every now and then we'd get a request to do a felony type of search at the courthouse. And well, we didn't know much about it at the time, but I started off by just finding out where the court records were in Cook County. And I was going from there. We did that for a number of years, and finally I was in St. Louis one day. I was just hanging out. I was doing another job at the same time. And he goes, "Steve, I got a newspaper article in the Wall Street Journal I think you'd be interested in." He says, "Background checks are the next biggest thing." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." So I got on a train from St. Louis, took the train to Chicago. Monday morning, came to his office, and he looked around for the newspaper. He couldn't find it. So finally, we found it laying around in a corner somewhere, and he looked it up, and there were 4 CRAs in it. There were 4 CRAs, and I said, "Oh, I can do this." And I sent them each a fax saying, "Cook County searches." And from that, next day, I got everybody's business. I had all 4 companies' business, and that was the start, and it just rolled on forward from there. I mean, county after county.
And so from there, you just added more and more counties. And
I did.
And as I recall, you ended up putting together, starting down the road of a national retrieving network.
I did, and it was kind of interesting how that came about. But, I would get calls. I said, I was doing Cook County, I think. Then I said, one of the companies said, "Can you do DuPage County?" And I said, "Well, why not?" So I hopped on, there was this commuter train, went to DuPage, had no idea what to find, and went there, and they had a public access terminal. Cook County didn't have public access terminal back then. It was microfiche. But DuPage had a computer, and I learned how to do computers. And my friend Barry, he was a little nervous about it because he said, "Well, we're doing well in Cook County. Why do you want to expand anywhere? Because if you make a mistake, then you can lose Cook County." And I said, "What kind of mistake have I know? It's the same as Cook County." So we decided to split at that time. He kept his law clerking business, and I went off on the path of doing court records. And it grew from there too, because I get called one day and go, "Can you do Rockford? Can you do Milwaukee County? Can you do Kankakee?" And I said yes to everything. Everything. I didn't spend any time at home. I was on the road all the time, just finding things, finding people.
So I assume you finally went out of state and different states, and
every state.
It's just county by county.
Pretty much. Of course, around that time, Mike Sakey came out with that big bold red book. Was it the Bible? We used to call it the Bible of background checks. And I think CRAs used to write, letters to the courthouses, because I'd go to the courthouse and I see letters from CRAs at the courthouses doing a background check there. And I guess what I ended up doing by my getting the course lined up, I sped up the turnaround time quite a bit from 2 or 3 weeks to maybe 2 or 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. But it was fast. It was easy to do. It was like brand new territory. There were issues like I go to the courthouse and they say, well, what do you want this stuff for? Why? It's like no one wanted to give the information. So I had to be very, I don't know what the word is, perseverant. Is that the word? Is that a word? I had
Well, circumspect or explanatory, whatever, yeah.
Right. I had to, I had to do my driver's license, I had to almost give a written request to why I wanted it, and get approved. It was rough, but it opened up. It opened up.
Yeah, those are the days where county clerks said, what, background checks? Who are you? What do you want?
And I became good at that. I could I just broke through all these barriers over, a period of time, and it just fell one at a time, boom, boom. I found researchers put together. I didn't find researchers. I made researchers in a lot of places. And it was pretty exciting.
Wow.
It's still exciting, but it was exciting then. It was like a whole new world for everyone.
So that grew, and you described what happened, and then eventually you went international. Well, how did that come about?
Well, again, it's almost the same process. That was probably the mid-'90s. And at that time, Puerto Rico was international, and the Virgin Islands was really international, and Canada was getting to be a little bit here, not big, not much in Canada, but a little bit in Canada. And so at that time, I was with DAC at the time. And that was one beginning where they wanted to go electronic with their U.S. records. They were attempting very hard to put together some type of, do a lot over the internet. But the international was nothing, there was nothing there. So I said, no problem, I'll take it on. I'll take it on. And sure enough, we started a new side business. I partnered with DAC. It was called Crime Search International. And my first place to go, I think, was England. I think DAC had a trucking company. They were into the trucking business, and they had a trucking company in England. And so I flew out to London and started all over again.
You just figured out how it was done, or the best way you could find to do it.
It was no one knew. I think they might have been the CRB at the time, but no one knew how to access anything. It was kind of, secretive. Everything's secretive. So I just had to go in there and get my butt kicked around a little bit by clerks and everything. But over a period of time, they understood. And today, look at it, it's remarkable today what's available.
Yeah, now over the years, I saw the straight line offerings in lots and lots of countries. And now it's a big business. There's a lot of firms doing it. So this is fascinating. But you started it when it was like the Wild West.
It's almost, that's kind of like the pioneering days still. It's a long way to go. I think I would like to see someone pick up where, when I leave off to finish the job. But I think that the world can be brought together, unified, to be able to provide criminal background records globally. It's just a matter of time and effort and, of course, some dollars involved. But I think it's possible. And I'm afraid I don't think I have the time to finish that job. I'll start it, and I'm starting it.
And there's other firms. Now there's lots of firms doing everything.
Yes.
And then you also had the Background Investigator. And to the best of my knowledge, that was the first publication for the background screening industry. There's others now, obviously. Barry Nixon, the pre-employment director, he's one of the sponsors of the program. But I think you were doing it way back when.
Back in the 90s, in the 1990s. The idea of that was to explain to people in the background check, CRAs and record providers, what was out there in the United States. Basically, it was all the United States, and who was going online, how to do a search in a place, understanding the judicial system so people could be able to talk about it, what classifications of crimes were. And you taught me a lot about that too, Les. Just understanding the classifications of criminal records. No one knew what adjudication withheld was or conditional discharge, which became troublesome later on. But it was like conditional discharge, 18 months. Everybody thought you were guilty. Times have changed, but it was different. So that's how Background Investigator brought that out to people, how to do work, where to find it, how to make your life easier in background checks. And it was more like a tutorial, I thought of it as.
And for those of you that remember, it originally started off as a paper version. It was like 14, 20 pages. It was mailed.
It was up to
It had
32
a lot
pages.
of material in it, a lot of articles.
I was pretty good at it. I was.
Yeah, and
And
I appreciate you. You had Les Rosen's corner in there for a while. I appreciated that.
I did.
Whatever, something I may have written or
Well,
somewhere.
you used to publish your own articles, and that was the forum, Les Rosen's Corner. It was beautiful. It was great.
Yeah, I just remember you had a ton of educational material in there, and those were the days when you're right. People didn't know necessarily what was
But
what.
they sure know today.
There weren't a lot of lawyers involved in the industry back then. Yeah.
There weren't. You were the lawyer.
I remember what you told me once that it was bathroom reading. People would get 14 pages of that.
It's a good place to keep it there. You learn a lot. You never know where you're going to learn, but that's a good place. You're free. Your mind's free of other things.
And you also, obviously had help from our good friend, mutual Phyllis Nadell. The first industry conference in Long Beach, California. What got into you? What made you decide to do that on your own dime?
It's kind of complicated, but back in the middle 90s when I first started the publication, I was speaking with a couple guys in the industry who thought that, tell me everybody hides everything from everyone. And I could tell when I used to go to the courthouse to do the searches, people would be hiding their work, before they make copies of work, they had a letterhead with the name of the company, and people would be hiding everything, and no one's talking to anybody. And, so I was talking to Robert Hughes, I think it was, in Dallas. He said, well, you get along good with everybody in the industry. Maybe people will listen to you because you're like in the middle. You have no competition for anyone. And I tried back in 97. I put a little blurb in there that, how about starting an organization about no takers? And it stayed in my mind for quite a while. And then about 2000, right after of New York City with 2001, I was talking to Phyllis, and I said, you know what? Why don't I just do it myself? I said, if this is what my dream is, let's take advantage of it. Let's do it. I'll do it. The industry was great to me. It paid well. I did well. And I said, let me just see if I could put something together. So my brainy idea, Mr. Promoter kind of guy, I said, well, we have a few California customers at the time. I said, let's do it. Let's go to California. And I don't know why I picked Long Beach. I have no idea anymore. But I think because of Queen Mary is there in the boat or something. It's like I rented a room there. I had no idea. Put an advertisement in my newspaper, and we got about 10 or 15 people to sign up.
I think there's more than that, actually.
Well, what happened is getting close to the end, I got a little nervous that no one was there. So I cut some deals with some of the guys in California. I said, come on, God, it'd be great. And you were speaking, and Oscar Marquis spoke, and I was speaking, and Nicole Milovich was there speaking about Cook County. But you sold your oats at that conference. That's where you sold your oats at that conference, talking about the California. They just instituted a new regulation of, I don't know what, you're an expert on that. And that was your talk. And we had the guy from California speak about the law. And it was a great conference.
And for some reason, you picked me as your keynote speaker. So, right, I spoke about the FCRA and the California law and
Yes.
Went through stuff. And
you always had the 10 reasons why you should not be in background screening or something like that.
All I did was say what the FCRA said, and that was enough to scare people. Yeah. I did nothing fancy. I just said FCRA section 607 says this, and 609 says this, and people went, "Ooh, it does."
It's what the CRAs needed to hear.
Yeah,
it was important. So that afternoon, we finished up the conference, and I said, "Well, we have an hour to kill." I said, "Why don't we start an association?" That's exactly the words that came out of my mouth. And I said, "Can anyone want to volunteer to come on up?" And none of you guys all were quiet. So I looked around, and of course, who do I see first? You. I said, "Les, come on up here." And I said, "No, you come on up here." That's Mike Sankey and Sandra Burns and a couple other guys. And that was, you guys came up there and said, "Okay, it's your ballpark now. You're the CRA. I'm the provider. I'm the researcher."
Yeah, so I think that actually happened. I know Kurt Schwall was at that very first Long Beach conference, but I think you're talking about at one of the Tampa conferences.
Tampa came afterwards. So what happened then was Sankey thought it was a great idea. He says, "Why don't let's put together, why don't we send something out to everybody that I know?" I used Sankey's help. And I said, let's go to Tampa. Because at that time, I didn't know where background screening began. But it seemed like most of my customers from the beginning were from the Tampa Bay area. Like Alan Haft, I remember Alan Haft and Borg Warner and companies that no longer are in business. So we actually put it together. I put it on with your support and Mike's support. And we had about 176 people. Many of all the companies, and then you guys. It was your show. I was just the facility. I gave you the forum. I said, "Here you go," and you have your famous tie cutting segment there. I can't remember.
Oh, that's right. I cut Bruce Berg's tie for.
You sure did.
I spent 2 hours talking about the FCRA, so in the middle, I said I gotta do something a little job, so I cut Bruce Berg's tie in two, just to get people laughing.
But I think you guys might have planned it. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe it was pretty funny. Everybody got kicked, and you guys took a vote, and that's you guys took off from there. I mean, you already had your plans for your ad hoc committees and everything. You were already you guys took it, you rolled with it, and every year, for the next several years, we grew and grew those conferences. There was like maybe 1,000, 500, 800 people, and we had great speakers, and like today. And then one day, I looked at it and I said, look at this. Look what you guys did. I said, amazing.
Well, and a lot of it's thanks to you, Steve, for putting together that first Long Beach conference and the Tampa conferences and telling people to get off their butts and start an association. So congratulations.
It did, and it worked. It worked. And I didn't plan the outcome. I just planned the plan. The outcome. You guys, it was amazing. You had all that. It was just watching. Great job, Les, and all your helpers.
Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you giving me this start by having me be your sort of keynote speaker on all those conferences.
But you also, at the same time, you said, I'm the only conference you want to speak at. You were very kind and considerate to me, because you got the game. You came well, except for Sherm, but you were in demand. He's probably still are in demand.
Right. Yeah. Now people demand I go away, but a different type of demand. Right. So, Steve, in the early days, who are some of your mentors in terms of getting started with all the various things you've done?
Well, I got to say Barry Isaacson. Barry Isaacson had to be my first one. He showed me what potential was for what the clients were. But over the years, I think Jerry Wright, I don't know if you remember Jerry Wright. Jerry Wright was head of the research at the Criminal Records Department at DAC. And she had faith in me and my abilities, and gave me opportunities that no one else, just unexpected opportunities. DAC needed help, and she made sure the pathway to me was there. And Dick Wimbish from DAC again, he's the one who saw the vision and Billy Metter. She also saw the vision of what criminal records can be. Albert Bueno, of all people, of all people. Right. Sorry, Albert, but anyway. Albert told me one time, he said, give him credit for this, he said, we don't pay you for your clears, Steve, we pay you for your hits. And I got stunned because, but the truth is, it's the hits that count. Anyway, everybody can clear them. I used to have a joke. I joked around. I was not serious here, but I was joking around there and say, yeah, we're so good, we clear them before we get them. But it's kind of a stupid joke.
And I know you worked a lot with Mike Sankey in terms of helping with conferences and
Phyllis, she was the background, the backbone of it. She kept it organized and making sure everything was in place. I go do my
fantastic.
Yes.
Well, let's switch a little bit. I mean, thank you for sharing your career path and the information you have. It's just a fascinating story. What's the lesson you learned early in your career that has sort of stuck with you today that comes to top of mind? I'm sure you've learned lots of lessons, but what's one that you'd want to share that comes top of mind?
If I listen to all the people who are what do you call them, doomsayers or can't do this type of people, I learned that don't take you can't do this as an answer. If you think there's a way to do it, to go for that. Don't stop just because someone says you can't do it. You find your own idea, make your own path that way. And if you hit a wall, bounce off of it. Don't get stuck to the wall. Just bounce off and keep going. Don't take no for the final answer unless you realize it is the final answer. And then if it is, move on. Don't believe it, kill it. That's those kind of things like that. Just try your hardest, do your best, and just keep on doing it. And at the end of the day, you can say, well, at least I did it, like Frank Sinatra said, my way.
That's a great advice. If you hit a wall, to keep on doing it and try and find a way. And I guess that's the Frank Sinatra theme. I did it my way. Right. That's great. I appreciate that. So, Steve, I mean, what do you enjoy about background screening? Why did you stay in the screening industry? You're the type of guy, you could have done anything.
Thanks for that compliment. I think that it was so new, and it still is. I still have that same enthusiasm I had back then. You know, it's finding to go in the unknown. I mean, I went to some weird places to find out about criminal records and the breakthroughs and the excitement. I mean, who would have thought about doing a conference in India? I mean, you know, there's no organization going on in India. We did the same thing in India that we did in the USA. So the excitement and the thrill of just putting something together, whether it's opening up a new county and having a researcher there and be able to do the work, the same thing all over again. The excitement, as long as it's there, and it still is with me, and the motivation, you know, and the waking up in the morning today and say, what can I do today? I don't always say, what can I do today to make the world a better place? But, you know, I'm alive and let's make the best of it. So I think that the excitement of everything, it's just thrilling.
Well, that's fantastic. You still have that same enthusiasm. In our list of first, you actually put on the first international screening conference. You flew me out to Bangalore, and I think Barry Nixon was there too, and kept us company. And you put on the first international background screening conference, and brought a lot of the folks in India together who are doing background checks. That was a great thing. We stayed at the Bangalore Taj, and that was a great conference.
You know, we did that for several years. Yeah, we did the same run. We did the same thing, and they're still around. Those guys, some of those guys are still around today and very successful in the business. India researchers in India. They're not so much into a few CRAs there, but they've been very, very active in the criminal record provider industry and that type of thing. They're great. I think it opened up the door to new opportunities for everybody in the United States to expand into international.
Yeah. So with everything you've done and everything we've talked about, and I'm sure we hit the tip of the iceberg, but what kind of stands out in your mind as a proud moment that brings a smile to your face and say, God, that was a good one?
Right, the number one thing, of course, is I think you guys, PBSA. You know, I walk in at conferences when I go there, and I see everyone walking around, many people I don't know, young people, and I look at this. And every time, I don't get goosebumps, but I get like overwhelmed by some type of emotion that, look what we all have done out of just thin air, and that's probably it. I mean, there's many little things, but to me, that is this amazing thing, and everybody, I had to say that. And something like
those conferences.
Your blog is great. I mean, look at that. Where we come up to blog, no, vlog.
I mean, that's true that you go to PBSA conferences and people don't realize the history that you really kind of got the ball rolling with that Long Beach conference and the first Tampa conferences where the first time people in the industry got together and became friends and formed connections and contacts. And
when the lights get turned on, it's amazing, and then it saddens me when the lights get turned off at the end of the conference. So I kind of feel left. I say, oh, wow, it's over. But it's not over. It's like a mustard seed. We started with a little tiny seed and grew into the big plant. So it's going to keep growing.
It's huge.
Yes.
Let's do a little pivot here. We've talked about background checks. We've talked about, PBSA. Let's talk more about Steve Brownstein outside of background screening. Other than the fact that you're living in paradise and Saipan as your home base, tell us about some of the hobbies or interests or things you do outside of background screening, some of the things that you do or you do for fun.
God, asked me to sponsor something. I said, why don't I just do the whole thing? So for his inauguration party, I brought out like some Hawaiian reggae bands out here, and it clicked. And next thing you know, I'm doing Manila. Don't give me an idea because I'm going to run with it. And so I took Manila, Honolulu, Guam, Saipan. I started promoting concerts all over the South Pacific. And we got a bit a little too much, but it was fun. Bands like UB40 and Shaggy and Pini Pablo and the Ying Yang Twins and all the Hawaiian reggae bands all over the place. It was exciting. Now the younger guys can handle that. It's good.
That's amazing. I mean, you and our friend Jason Morris have that in common because Jason promotes bands too. So
that's what he says.
That's an interesting industry. I remember that you were doing. Tell us about the Chicago Golden Gloves. Tell us what Golden Gloves is. I know because I do boxing. Amateur workout type boxing. But tell us about the Golden Gloves.
First, I knew a little about it growing up, except that, I was like a tough little kid, like to fight. But I was raised by my grandfather, basically, and he was an old school guy from Chicago. And his brothers, my great uncles, were all like boxers back in the 20s and 30s. It was like way back when, in the olden days. And, he said one day, he says, Steve, go out and find a hall and promote a boxing show. And I said, and he said, just go find it, do it, get a ring and do it. And I did. And I took a liking to it, and the people in it. And they had this annual tournament called the Golden Gloves. It was founded in Chicago. And it became national and then international. And in fact, they were like a stepping stone to going to the Olympics. And so I became involved in the Golden Gloves first as a corner person, they call corner man. Then I helped out being a boxing manager. And I was at the Golden Gloves tournaments. I'd hand out the gloves to the fighters and towels. I mean, I started at the bottom. And eventually I worked my way up to, I became the secretary of the charity. And we put on a great show for years. Same thing I did for the Golden Gloves. I bring in teams from other cities like New York or from Texas, and we have competitions. And then then I took it worldwide. We'd have a Chicago traveling team, and we traveled to other countries. So
the Golden Gloves is a great organization because it's taking kids and channeling their energy in a positive, disciplined way and helping them grow and develop.
In fact, I see that a lot of young men that are lost and things, and now it's young women too, because we had the first women boxers back in the early 90s that were, it's trouble kids, but it's a good place for them to come off the streets and they get disciplined in their lives. It's a very disciplined sport. And they get recognized, and maybe some of the kids need something. They need the recognition that they're not a bad person. I used to work on the riverboats on the Mississippi River along, from Davenport down to St. Louis. That's why I was in St. Louis. I was doing a boxing match in St. Louis. And I used to work with the riverboats. It was like a Wild West riverboats. I found some kind of thrill in mixing riverboats, old-time gamblers, and boxing. It was kind of like a storybook.
Oh, Steve, you're never at a loss for fun. I have to say, you're also probably the most traveled person I know, because I think we can start a game. Where in the world is Steve Brownstein? I mean, you're everywhere.
Not as much as before. Nowadays, I still take a lot of cross-Pacific trips back to the States. I have a granddaughter, so I have to go see her. I mean, I don't want her to grow up without her grandpa around, so I go as often as I can, and sometimes it's every 6 weeks I'm flying 8,000 miles there to Chicago, and to spend a week or 2 weeks with the family, and then I come back here and get things together. I travel to Asia still quite a bit. I have I've researched people there, like in Macau, it's a big base of mine, and Thailand and Singapore and Korea. And the places I go all over Asia. I don't do much of Europe as much as I used to. In Africa, I've been all over the place in Africa. Crazy stories in Africa, crazy stories in, even in India I have stories. I would do the searches myself in India back then. I fly to India to go do the work and learned a lot and taught a lot. And today some of the same things are still used today by India research companies.
I wish I had your frequent flyer miles.
It's amazing that I give a lot away. If I can adopt you, I give it a lot to my family. I fly them around. But interesting enough, one other thing I gave away, I published, publishing was the greatest thing, though. I got to go everywhere. I always put a picture of the courthouse that I went to in the paper. And I did a lot for things. I would do anything to take care of a client. I mean, I certainly... I saw people in the industry wouldn't do something because it was like $3 or $5 more than it would cost them. I said, one of my brother said, Steve, he says, sometimes you have to give away the sidewalk to get the building. I didn't understand it at the time, but he would explain it to me. I used to fly to Macau or to Hong Kong to get a record. I still charged my client the same price as a regular search, but I would personally go there and I'd understand the system. And it really came out to my benefit and everybody's benefit. It was amazing.
That's incredible. There's a thing I'm sure you heard about called the Century Club, where people have been to over 100 countries. I think more than a member of that.
Well, I should be like top tier frequent flyer too. But that's not a problem. That's actually it's fun. But the real truth is family at home. That's the real solid part about it. If you're on the road all the time and you're staying in hotels and with strangers, I think that you're missing something. It sounds glamorous and everything, but the real truth is, the real glamour is the person who works hard and takes care of a family and who takes care of their life and help others become better. I mean, because not everyone can have the same blessings. They have a family, but to take care of others and to be a good person, those are really the best attributes.
Those are great words to share, great ideas. So before we close out, we may have already have covered this, but fun facts. Is there anything about you that no one knows or suspect that you care to share with the world?
Well, I think I did cover most of it. And I like people. I like to see people accomplish things. Even watching my granddaughter, when she does something new for the first time, the amazement, the look on her face when she discovers something. I get joy from living life. And I find that, we're blessed, we're all blessed with one life on earth. And the fact that I have the opportunity to make the best of it for myself, and that's what I try to do. And I try to spread that kind of message around with me, that this is your life, make the best of it. And that's kind of a fun fact about me. I really care about people and other people's lives, and as well as my own. And I'm not like the world peace, that kind of person, but I certainly think everybody should actually be themselves. That's the most important.
Steve, those are great words. I appreciate you sharing. Before we close up, just one last question before I give you the last word. You've seen it all, you've done it all. What's your advice to people that are trying to find their way in the industry? They're a newcomer, someone who's maybe just starting out or been in it a couple of years, trying to figure out whether to stay in it. Last words of advice you want to give to anyone who's in the industry?
I think this is so much. I think never stop learning. Always take an interest in things around you. If you're working in a job in our industry, take the time out to learn what you're doing. Understand, to write the word felony, to write the word misdemeanor is meaningless unless you know what it means and how it's used and what purposes it's used. And the things of that those things all add up. And the more knowledge you have, the more worthwhile you become to these companies you might be working for, and the more opportunity you might have for advancement in your career. So I'm always pretty much self-started and went out. But I never stop learning. I never think that I know it all. And I don't think that there'll be a time I still study all that. Like I said, I'm putting together this worldwide documents of what's available out there. No one has it. And I think to do something beneficial with yourself and within your own occupation, do your best every day. They teach us that 100%, 120%, some people would say.
So keep on learning and do your best.
And be proud of yourself. I don't get patted on my back all the time. I don't need it, to have everybody tell me, "Oh, Steve, you're the greatest," and this and that. That's fleeting. I have to look in the mirror. And I look in the mirror and I say, am I doing the best I can? And that's the test for me, Just be satisfied with myself and know that I'm doing the best I can and keep trying.
Great words. Steve, it's been a great interview. I've known you for a long time. I've learned things about you that I didn't know before and had insights I didn't have. And so it has been a fabulous broadcast. I appreciate it. Before we sign off, as I always do, let me give you the opportunity for the last word. Anything you want to add or say, the floor is yours.
So much for me, but I want to thank everyone in the industry for supporting me and helping me become the person I am, that gave me a life and still gives me a life that I really never dreamed I could have. I look around and I see people's accomplishments, and I say, it's a great world, it's a great place to be, and seriously, I wouldn't want to trade it for anything else. I have so many friends, so many people around me that I've gotten to know. Les, you've been great for me since I've known you. In our troubles and our good times, we've been standing together. And that's what many of the people, we have great people in this industry. And, I see these LinkedIn publications and I see how people have their reasons for being in the business. And for some very great reasons, and some for just simple, which is like profit, money. But in the end of the day, everybody's working together to get somewhere. And so I say that it's just waking up in the morning and knowing that I have another chance to live is probably all I have to say at this time. To live another day, do the best I can, be nice, be kind, and God bless you all. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Steve Brownstein, I appreciate it. Be nice, be kind, live another day, do your best for others and your family. All great words, all great lessons. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another great episode of Behind the Screens, and today's special guest, and one I've been waiting for a long time, and I'm so happy that we are able to get him on the program today. My longtime friend and just all-around great guy, Mr. Stephen Brownstein. Steve, thank you.
Good job, guys. Thank you.
All right, that was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.